So yeah, it looks like, maybe not. Again, it's sideways.
Would they mention that altercation in the encyclopedia, though? Would they want to... I've never read any of the WWE encyclopedias. They release one of those every year?
Probably not every year. Probably every 3 or 4 years, maybe.
3 or 4 years. I might have to pick up the one they released now. When's that coming out? Do they have a release date? Do you know?
Not listed here, no.
All right, well, hey, check out the WWE Encyclopedia 2012 whenever it comes out.
Yes.
Or it might be 2013. They have this way of numbering everything the year in advance, like
cars, yeah.
This is 93.5 CHMR FM.
You're listening to wrestling superstar, the Triple X Sex Express Sexy Eddie, and you're listening to Ring Rust, the one and only wrestling talk radio show.
Ring Rust presents Macho Facts. Randy Savage uses ribbed condoms inside out, so he gets all the pleasure. And the Macho Man's tears cure cancer. Too bad he never cries.
Jericho, Fozzy, and the Steve East of Canada, and you're listening to 93.5 right here.
And yes, I interviewed Chris Jericho.
Wow. I would have liked to have been around for that. How was he?
He was polite, nice guy to talk to.
Over the phone, I guess?
Yeah. That was his first retirement when he went on tour with Fozzy.
Back in 2000, and back when he was starting the Eric Bischoff angle with Cena, 2006,
I think so, yeah.
Back when he had long hair still.
Yes.
Jericho, one of the greats. Let's talk about 1001 Raw here. Let's talk about what happened. I mean, some of the highlights, some of the lowlights. You know, it was AJ's first night as general manager.
Yeah.
So we get to see sort of what that's going to look like. And I don't know if I'll say I was underwhelmed, but I was certainly like not... It went about as I expected it, and sort of how I was worried it was going to happen. I was worried they were going to devolve the whole AJ as general manager into basically an attempt to antagonize Daniel Bryan every week. And right now it seems like that is what they're doing. She's just going to, every week it's like 3 or 4 segments of her getting at Bryan and making him run through hoops or whatever. And then she makes a couple matches and blah, blah, blah. You know, you go one-on-one with The Undertaker, right? Like Teddy Long.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's really, I mean, because the thing about AJ as GM is that it was unexpected, right?
Yeah.
It was different. When was the last time we had a face general manager for any of the shows? Was Stephanie a face back in early SmackDown days?
When she started, I think.
Yeah, so that was probably the last time. And this is certainly the first time we've seen any woman that's not a McMahon in any sort of authority position in the WWE, especially general manager is a huge role. General manager of Raw is a huge role. I mean, if you look at the people who've held that job, you know.
Vicky Guerrero,
Eric Bischoff, Mick Foley, Mike Adamle, probably the most qualified of them all.
Yeah.
You know,
he was quite the qualified female, yes.
Yeah, oh yeah, Mike Adamle, man. But this is really one of the first, you know, face, pretty straight up, face little girl GMs we've seen, and it's interesting. My issue is it's so different, but now they're being predictable with it, and they're sort of losing that unpredictability by having her just antagonize Bryan.
And it's only the first one.
And it's only the first week, yeah, that's right, and that's an issue. And then maybe we're just prejudging, but I think wrestling needs to be very, very careful every week to tell a consistent story, because otherwise you have a whole week to let it stew in your head. At least I have a whole week to let it stew in my head, and make all these crazy judgment calls and all this stuff, and have all this great discussion about it, and all these ideas come out, and then all of a sudden next week it's changed, and all those vanish into a cloud of smoke, because we just don't get enough every week, it seems.
And Jinder Mahal is wearing a different colored headdress for some reason.
He is, yeah. But no, it has red always. He's got a couple, maybe.
Yeah, well.
Maybe the box got stolen one time.
That's what our old Cal keeps talking about on Aftermath.
Is the different turbans.
Yeah. He's got a different one now for some reason.
I haven't watched Aftermath in a while, but Aftermath's a lot of fun, too.
Yeah.
So, yeah, 1000th Raw. We get AJ making the John Cena versus Big Show main event for 1001 Raw for the main event for number one contendership for the WWE Championship at SummerSlam. So that's a logical match. You know, Big Show is still positioned up there next to Cena. They're really the two most obvious contenders. They were the two men involved, in addition to Punk, in the angle last week with, you know, Big Show causing disqualification, basically. So it makes sense. It was a logical direction to go, and I like that. And then pretty much for the rest of it, we see her, you know, talking to Bryan, having Bryan evaluated psychiatrically by these guys.
Yeah.
Which was odd, I guess. I mean, I don't know. I guess Bryan did sort of have a bit of a breakdown. I just don't really know where they're going with Daniel Bryan right now. It seems like an odd storyline. I mean, are they segueing into him to work with Charlie Sheen at SummerSlam? Is that really where they're going, do you think?
It could be.
It could be that Charlie Sheen... I would hope that they would not just put Charlie Sheen versus Daniel Bryan on the card. I would hope that they would have, you know, Daniel Bryan versus X with Charlie Sheen in his corner. You know what I mean? Like Battle of the Billionaires type thing. I would hope it would be something like that, because that can actually work. But the one thing I really do like about just having Charlie Sheen there, as much as I'm not a fan of him or any of his work, is that he is going to draw mainstream attention to Daniel Bryan specifically. Not just to WWE, but to Daniel Bryan specifically. If Daniel Bryan and Charlie Sheen are involved in any sort of angle at SummerSlam, which seems to be the logical place to do it, you know, it's in LA, you got the stars around the corner, WWE has always been very, very open about liking to work with celebrities. They hit big back in rock and wrestling, and I think Vince is still trying to capture some of that lightning again.
Yeah.
So it's good from that perspective that it will draw, you know, greater than 0 eyes to Daniel Bryan at some point.
Yeah.
And if they have a great match and if they have a great angle, excellent, even better. And if they don't, at least Daniel Bryan gets a big marquee match at SummerSlam against somebody that everybody knows who Charlie Sheen is right now. Anybody who's going to watch wrestling knows who Charlie Sheen is.
Yeah.
So there's potential there. So I know I've heard a lot of negative opinions about that potential, and I think there's more to it than just, you know, potentially having a bad match. I think there's a lot of upside to having that sort of interaction, and I think that Daniel Bryan's a good talent to choose. He's a guy who needs that sort of rub. He needs kind of another push now. The yes is going to start to die down soon, right? And maybe not the chance, but the fanfare around it is going to start to die down. But I do like that they kept him as a heel. They've pretty clearly positioned Bryan as a heel now, and I think he works well as a heel. I think the Daniel Bryan voice, as I call it, his promo voice, is a heelish voice. You know, this kind of pompous little guy who thinks he's the best in the world, and, you know, is arrogant, and but, you know, kind of doesn't build up to it. It is great, I think. So it'll be good in the long run. I mean, what do you think about the whole Charlie Sheen, and what do you think in general about inclusion of celebrities in the product around this SummerSlam-ish time of year and WrestleMania time of year?
If it's done well, it actually usually comes off as at least entertaining, if not, useful. Like the whole Sean Hayes thing centered around the Three Stooges was just sort of
not very
dumb.
Good at all.
Yeah,
and the crowd let him know.
Yeah, and then he went on. What was it? Was it Jay Leno? Or?
It was one of the night shows, and trashed the whole thing, which was pretty,
not helpful.
No, and it was pretty two-faced too, and I didn't like that at all. It's not his fault that the audience thought he did a terrible job. And whether or not they said go out there and do a Hulk Hogan impression, he signed on to do it. You know what I mean? The WWE fans have the right to respond to anything, any way they want. That's the great thing with the industry is that it allows such a second-by-second interaction with the audience.
Yeah, that was Will Sasso who did the actual Hulk Hogan impersonation.
Oh, was I don't know.
And he's well known as a big wrestling fan back in the Mad TV days.
Really?
With Bret Hart.
I didn't know. I didn't know any of the Three Stooges actors. So
okay.
But
well, I knew Sean Hayes from Will and Grace, and
never watched any Will and Grace in my day, unfortunately. But
it was a fun show.
I hear they stand on couches and tell people to come up on the couch with them, something like that.
No, that would be Dharma and Greg.
Dharma and Greg. Never mind.
See,
it's tough when it's just guy and girl. There's too many of those. Obviously, just like there's too many.
Clearly,
there's too many first name last name wrestlers.
Yes.
Seth Rollins, Antonio's like too many first name last name. That seems to be their boilerplate now. Is you're gonna sign? Okay, you need a first name and a last name so we can trademark it. Go to the shed and figure it out. Come back to me in 2 minutes, or else we're going to call you.
Turn on the random name generator.
Or else we're going to call you Paul Jimerson. Right? That's the name, unless you can think of a better one.
We'll make your first name your last name, your last name your first name.
Yeah. Hey, it worked out pretty well with Daniel Bryan, right? Everybody laughed when he showed up on the scene with that silly little name, and now here he is. Although there was that promo where he talked about being Bryan Danielson again.
Yeah.
And that amounted to certainly not a name change. So yeah, I mean Charlie Sheen versus Daniel Bryan or some iteration. But then the other part of this, and connecting back to Raw, is that Kane comes in and beats him up.
Yeah.
I for one am done with Daniel Bryan and Kane. I don't want to. I mean, I think we got enough of that in the last 3 months over the last 3. You know what I mean? I mean, do you not agree? Do you think it's all right, Daniel Bryan and Kane? Does that make Kane a face now?
I don't know.
Because 6 months
Presumably.
ago, 6 months ago, Kane was like the most evil guy. Like if we're talking about how he was presented, I mean, embrace the hate. I'm a monster, literally. Now I put the mask back on, and I've literally become a monster, Cena. And no matter how many times you attitude adjustment me off the top of an ambulance, it doesn't matter. Like, and now all of a sudden he's beating up Daniel Bryan because AJ told him to, or because he's in a crazy room. And I guess that's what Kane does: is go into rooms with crazy people and beats them up because he's also crazy. It doesn't. It's weird. It doesn't make sense, I don't think.
And he was feuding with John Cena, and then Randy Orton came back and said, "Oh, well, I'm going to go turn my attention back to Randy Orton again."
No, yeah, Orton came back and said, "I need a WrestleMania match." And Kane said, "I'm on the upper mid-card also, and I have nothing to do with WrestleMania." And they were like, "We should have a match for that reason." And then for some reason, Kane went over, which was really weird.
Yeah.
I would never have predicted that. I predicted Orton pretty strongly in that match and was very surprised to see Kane beat him.
Of course, many people predicted longer than 8 seconds for the world title match.
In the back of my head, I said they might do it quick because every now and then they have a quick match.
Yeah.
And in the back of my head, I was worried, and then it happened. And I wish I told somebody though, because then I could actually brag about predicting it. I did predict Punk over Jericho by submission though.
Okay.
I predicted that well in advance. Because they always have the top guy win by submission.
Yeah.
At some point in 2007, they decided, Cena, you're not going to win with the FU anymore. You're going to win with the STFU. And you're going to do that every night from now on. And so it just made sense. Like, okay, they're going to have Punk use the Vice for the same reason. I guess they feel like submission wins are more legitimate for a top face. Making a guy quit is a bit more legitimate.
Making the MMA guys like the show, I guess? I don't know.
Yeah, maybe, yeah. I mean, I think it is good to have more realistic finishers. Like, I think the cross arm breaker works. I think the TNA probably does it a bit too much. I mean, I saw a Bound for Glory series match between Samoa Joe and the Pope, where Samoa Joe locked in a armbar from the bottom, the same way like a guy who in the UFC would be like if a guy was in his. Did you watch UFC at all?
No.
Okay, well, if a guy's in your guard, which basically means he's between your legs, you can throw up your legs and get him an armbar from the bottom, and just pull his arm basically like this, so he has to tap out from the top. Samoa Joe won with a move like that, and that to me was crossing the line towards trying to be too realistic for wrestling.
Okay.
Because it doesn't make sense for me to see the Pope submit from the top. right, from standing up and all of a sudden, oh, I've been beaten now. You know what I mean? Like, wrestling is about having that exciting finish, I think. The one, everyone chanting 1, 2, 3, or the tap, that type of finish doesn't really, you know what I mean? You need to be prompted. You need to play with the crowd instead of being like, oh, now the match is over. Okay.